Hey, what's up guys, Mathless97, and today we're talking about the possibility of a WWE 2K14 General Manager mode. And let's just get right into this one. When they had the General Manager mode back in SmackDown vs. Raw 2008, 2007, 2006, it was definitely the best game mode of the games, arguably one of the best in WWE games history. And while GM mode was a great mode, there were a lot of things wrong with it. There were a lot of sort of broken pieces to it. And I'm just going to touch on some of those that need to be improved, and also a possibility for something they could add in later on. So, definitely number one, we need some more interactive feuds. Superstars always have to compete against the other superstar that they're in the feud with. And especially if you have something like a tag team feud, that means you got to have the same 4 guys in the ring at the same time every single week. Which is why usually if I do a tag team feud, you have to break it down into 2 feuds. But I mean, if you could make it even so, like, they could incorporate what they had in Universe mode with the Allies and Rivals list, and say, for example, you have this, I'm going to use the Sheamus Sandow feud they have going, and say you want to continue the feud, but you don't want to have Sheamus and Sandow face each other every single time. You could have Sandow's partner, Cody Rhodes, face Sheamus in a match, and the feud would still keep going. Or you could have, say, Sandow versus somebody, or like if you could add in a promo segment after it or something like that. So, like, say you have Sandow versus somebody as simple as Sin Cara, but then Sheamus comes out afterwards and you say bro kicks him or something like that. And that's where they have some of the little promo not cutscenes, but they have the little promo segments. But it'd be cool if they added some actual cutscenes in there. Like, if you want to have an interview space with, I don't know, say you want to have an interview space with Rob Van Dam, or you want to have, like, a new superstar, like what they're doing with RVD right now. You want to have a new superstar. WWE could put together, like 2K, they could make something so that they put together a few of the story mode segments, and you put them together with that call, and you could just use, like, a few cutscenes from those story segments, or match segments, like match highlights. Just put them together and add a little bit of text on it, and there you go, that's your cutscene. Or maybe even make it customizable so that people can set up their own cutscenes, but like they just take the stuff from story mode, take the scenes, and just put that call into it and use it, rather than having to actually go into story mode and create it and then, you know, like edit it all together if you do YouTube. But I mean, just that whole promo idea that they have for it, it could work out. You could have the interview segment, say you have Matt Striker interviewing Randy Orton or something like that, and you want to have, like, the Randy Orton interview segment. You could actually have that, be able to put in your own text, and just set up the interview cutscene from the story mode. So that's something else they should also, I don't see why they can't do it. I mean, some of the stuff that I mentioned, like an actual little promo or vignette thing, that might be a little far-fetched, but it's not impossible. It'd be something they could do, but even if they do something as simple as just taking story mode cutscenes, I mean, it would add definitely more depth to the game and make it more interactive. Another thing that's a big problem, injuries. While your show can get injuries in the games like SmackDown vs. Raw 2008 and before that, your superstars can get injuries, but the other shows, nobody gets injured. That is kind of a problem. What is the point of having injuries if only your show can be affected? Say, SmackDown has Rob Van Dam. No, not Rob Van Dam. Say SmackDown has Sheamus, and he's their top guy, he's the world champion, and he gets injured, and you're SmackDown, and then you have Raw, who has their main guy is John Cena, nothing happens to him. But say if Sheamus goes down on SmackDown, and Cena goes down on Raw, then it evens it out a little bit more, whereas SmackDown wouldn't be at a disadvantage because Sheamus is injured, he's their top guy, he's their champion, and now they gotta build somebody up there just like that at the click of a button, a snap of a finger, and that they would lose ratings because he's injured. But if somebody else can get injured from the other shows, then it evens it out a little bit more and just adds to the overall fairness of the game and makes it a little more competitive, because you're just working from downhill if a guy gets injured, And if nobody gets injured on the other shows, what's the point of even having injuries? The next thing on the list would be a larger roster. Now, back in the SmackDown vs. Raw 08, the one that they left off with, there was no free agents. You couldn't fill each roster with the 20 superstar maximum unless you made a bunch of calls. Somebody was bound to be down on the superstar numbers. And in 07, because there were only 2 brands, the roster might have been slightly bigger. I actually think it might have been smaller, possibly. But there was a nice, decent free agent pool. And now, definitely, if you want to have the 2 superstars with the giant rosters that they have now, which could potentially hit 80 superstars come 2K14, this wouldn't be too much of a problem to have a larger roster now. Maybe push things up to possible like 30 to 40 superstars. If they want to incorporate like NXT guys, you know, that would give you even more space. You could have some free agents, so that way if somebody goes down with an injury, and say, for example, they don't fix the injury situation, some guy goes down with an injury, and you can't afford to lose that roster spot, so you want to sign somebody to make a big signing. Whereas if there's nobody in the free agency, if you lose somebody, then you're down a roster spot. But that's the whole point of having a free agency. If someone goes down, you can replace them. And just not having a free agency or even a complete roster, it definitely it makes the show stale, because you got to have the same matches over and over. You have a very limited amount of possibilities. You have, say, 16 guys, and you have like 6 matches on the card. You could maybe keep, if you do even one-on-one matches, you could keep a few guys out. But I mean, you would keep a few guys out a week, but then still you'd swap them out for the same people. It would eventually you'd run out of feuds in that year span. That's why you would need to have a larger roster, and if not, have a free agency or something like that. But the 20-guy limit, at least increase it to something like 30, and with the roster size that they're getting up to now, that definitely shouldn't be a problem. Another thing would be that you could customize the shows, and sort of like what they do with Universe Mode now, where you can completely create shows. You could have, for example, WWE Superstars, NXT Main Event, or you could have Raw, SmackDown, and ECW, or you could have a TNA and WWE brand, you know. Just import that universe customization and just put it in GM mode, where you could maybe even have 7 days a week, not 7, you could have 6 days a week with a show on each day. Whereas, rather than having rather than having the 2 brands that you would be limited to, because they would most likely limit you to Raw and SmackDown. If you can customize your shows, depending on the roster you have, the calls you want to use, the superstars that are in the game, you know, you could definitely appeal to that even better. You could have an Attitude Era show and a normal roster show, and you could have guys like The Rock, Stone Cold, maybe even The Undertaker on the Attitude Era show, whereas you have guys like John Cena, Randy Orton, Sheamus. You have them on the Raw show, or the SmackDown, whatever you'd want it to be, the WWE show, and it'd be like a WWE versus WWF, or maybe you want to do ECW versus WCW versus WWE. I mean, just being able to customize your shows, it adds more to the interactiveness of General Manager mode, and definitely would lead into a possibility if there would be an online GM mode, which is the next that I'd want to get into. You could do the same with a Universe mode, just to be able to have an online mode for WWE games, especially in something like Universe or GM mode, where you can book the matches. GM mode especially, this would work for a lot. It would definitely work, because I've been thinking it would be cool to actually start a GM mode series with somebody, but you can't do that because you can't interact. You would have to go by chance that the CPU isn't going to take one of the guys. Like, say, the guy you're working with, they draft, say, CM Punk, and you're trying to not use CM Punk, and say, like, the exact roster isn't going to work, so you're supposed to take, say, John Cena, but the other show takes John Cena, then you're kind of stuck. You're not going to be able to keep the exact same rosters. In an online GM setting, especially where you could customize shows, you could have up to 6 people do it, and that wouldn't be too much, because you could have 6 people in a match. So, I mean, if you had something like GM mode, I mean, 2K, they have stuff with NBA, They could easily do stuff. You know, you have online leagues and stuff like that. So something like an online GM or an online universe mode would be really fantastic. I don't see. It seems like a possibility. Maybe not on this generation console, but for the PS4, the possibility of an online game mode definitely should happen. Whether even if it's not GM mode, which would be great. GM mode, it's a good offline thing, and it would be even greater if they could add it in an online setting. But just to have some sort of online league or something like that would definitely be a positive for 2K games and their future with WWE. Finally, we move on to the ratings and stuff, getting into things like the fan support, Power 25, WWE.com. While in 2007 they introduced the Power 25, and they did add settings in later on where if you don't, like, you were limited to the top 5 guys in your Power 15 were limited to the title, and that was definitely limiting. You should be able to have anybody challenge any title. That doesn't, you could say that takes away from the Power 25, but really it doesn't. That was what I liked about 06. Anybody could challenge for a title, whereas then in 07 and 08 it was really limited. You could have a maximum of like 5 guys, unless you put together a tag team, that could go for the championship. And considering your champion is your top guy, so he would take one of those spots, so you have like 4 challengers. So the Power 25, while I think it's a good setting, it's something they should keep, but I don't think it should be as limiting as if you're not a top guy, you cannot challenge for the title. Then you're not really able to build up superstars, because you could be limited. You want to do a 6-man battle royal or something like that, but you only have 4 guys who can challenge the champion, and you're missing a guy. And it's just not possible for you to do that unless you have a team. WWE.com, and this also leads into crowd reaction. You see your match ratings at the end, but you don't know how they're going to turn out until the whole show is over. So while you're playing the match, you could get the same reaction in a 2-star match as you can in a 5-star match, and you're not going to know the difference. Whereas, it would be something like, take the example of the Jersey crowd, or the Chicago crowd, or tonight's Raw's crowd, which this is 6/17. That Monday Night Raw was epic, but you could take crowds like that where, you know, this is awesome chants, or they could chant for the superstars, they could boo the superstars, they could boo the match if they really hate it for like the 1-star match. For example, the Randy Orton Sheamus match they had, where the crowd was not behind it at all, they were doing all that stuff. Arguably, that could have been a 1-star match based on the crowd's reaction. Whereas you get a match like CM Punk John Cena, Money in the Bank 2011, the crowd is ecstatic. They're booing the hell out of Cena. They're cheering the crap out of CM Punk. Punk becomes God. Cena becomes Satan. 5-star match. The stars are perfectly aligned. That would definitely, you'd be able to tell what your rating is, and you'd be able to know what you could fix. If you get a match like Alberto Del Rio and Sheamus where they don't like the feud, for example, say they are booing the crap out of Del Rio, then you know you got to change Del Rio. Whereas if you just get your match rating at the end of it, you don't know what is wrong, so you just have to sort of pick straws. You have to guess at random what you can change to make the feud better. Whereas if the crowd gets involved, not only does it give you more of an incentive to play the match because you know what you need to change exactly, but you'd be able to build your superstars around that. If the crowd doesn't like your guy as a heel, you could turn him face, or if he's a face and he's getting the crap booed out of him, then you turn him heel and try to work towards that. Or if the crowd doesn't like him, you could trade him, you could release him, sign a free agent. I mean, why am I talking like this? But, you know, just that idea. You could build off the crowd. The crowd would be able to react individually to each superstar the entire match. You just listen to what the crowd is saying, and then you can change your booking from there, and it gives you your rating based on the crowd. And WWE.com would be able to show the reactions like that. So say if you simulate a match, say you have Dolph Ziggler and Alberto Del Rio in a match, and you simulate that, and the crowd is really hot for Ziggler in that match, but you didn't play it, you can just go on to WWE.com and you could check some of the articles there, and hopefully they would have more than the little 4-page article layout they have. And if they do keep that layout, they have to be able to select everything like you could in 07. I don't know why, but in SmackDown vs. Raw 2008, you could select the main article, and you had the little pop-ups for the other ones, but you couldn't click them, which doesn't make any sense. That's what was good about 07, so if you have all the articles, you'll be able to click them all. And you'll be able to see what they are. They'll be for each show, individual superstars, the contracts are running out, or, I mean, like, they changed, whereas in SmackDown vs. Raw, it was the same thing, except for the main article. That was the only thing that changed. But you could always go onto WWE.com and say, well, the crowd was hot for Ziggler in this one, and then, okay, I gotta push Ziggler. Or, the crowd really hated Ziggler in this one, they think he should change his gimmick or something like that. Okay, well then I gotta work there. Or, the crowd really hated the World Championship match, but they loved the Intercontinental Championship match. Something like that, then you can look at it and be, okay, well, what exactly, how do I get this guy to here? And it gives you more of an interactiveness with how you can build your show and improve, because with the GM mode that they had back in 2008, you had to guess with what to do. You had no idea, okay, the fans don't like this match, I can boost the guy's popularity, but where something like that, you could get Kenny Dykstra could be your WWE champion because he's got 100 popularity and the crowd gets behind him. You don't have to build to him at all. This, if you added more interactiveness to GM mode, you could even get a guy like Santino Marella at 100 popularity, but the crowd isn't behind him still. And then you get the chance, you can actually take him down and you have to build a guy up to that stature where the crowd is actually behind him, goes through a few gimmick changes, or go through like the face heel turns, or change the gimmicks around. Like, you could go from Cesaro's 5 languages gimmick to teaming with Zeb Coulter or something like that. I mean, you never know what you could do. Just adding more of the interactiveness with the ratings to be able to, whereas instead of you just guessing what you're supposed to do, you have an idea of what you need to change. It doesn't tell you what you need to change, but it gives you the idea of what you could change and what you need to work on. So that's just a few ideas for the potential of 2K14 GM mode. I know this was a long commentary, but I wanted to be able to put all of my thoughts together into one video rather than, you know, break it into parts and have it be sort of a half-assed commentary that I'm confused on what I'm talking about. But figured I would put everything together into one compilation and see what you guys think about it. So what do you think if WWE does add in 2K, if WWE 2K adds in GM mode in 2K14, or maybe even 2K15 with the next-gen consoles? What do you guys think they should change to it? Do you want to see this kind of mode come back? Do you think it should stay buried forever and never come back into a WWE game? They should work on other things? Just what do you think they could improve on if they do bring it back? Just what are your thoughts in the comments below? If you stuck it out this far, be sure to leave a like. Leave a comment below saying that you made it this far, even if it's something as simple as good review, or I agree with what you're saying, or I don't agree. I like to get the interactiveness from my subscribers, so let me know in the comments below what you think about 2K14, what you think about a potential GM mode, and like I said, if you made it this far, be sure to leave a like. If you're new, subscribe. Thanks for watching. Keep on YouTubing.